A human boy fought a beast to save a wounded alien girl. The chief's response. The night was heavy over the forest of blue trees. A cold wind moved through the leaves, making them whisper like 1,000 small voices. In that strange world far from Earth, a young human boy named Aaron walked alone. He had come with a team of explorers, but the ship had been attacked by lightning during the storm and crashed deep inside the alien valley. When he woke, he found himself separated from the others with no signal, no food, and only a broken knife in his hand. He walked for hours searching for smoke or light, but the forest only grew darker. Then he heard a cry. It was not human. It was soft and broken, like the sound of someone trying to breathe through pain. Aaron followed the sound and came to a clearing where the blue grass was stained with dark blood. Lying there and in a fallen tree was a girl with silver skin and glowing eyes. Her arm was turned her side, bleeding badly. She looked like one of the local species he had heard about from the mission logs, the Alani people. She tried to move but could not. When she saw him, she flinched weakly as if afraid. Aaron raised his hands to show he meant no harm. He spoke gently, telling her he was here to help. She did not understand his words, but when he stepped forward and lifted the tree from her body, she stopped fighting. Her eyes were full of fear and pain, but also of something else, trust. He tore part of his shirt and wrapped her wound, trying to stop the bleeding. Her skin was colder than his, but the pulse and it was strong. Then he heard it again, a sound from behind the trees. A low growl. Something big was moving closer. Out of the dark came a beast. It stood taller than a man, its body covered in thick gray fur, its mouth lined with fangs that gleamed in the dim light. It had smelled blood and now it wanted to feed. Aaron had no weapon except his broken knife and his will. He pushed the girl behind him and faced the creature. The beast roared, shaking the ground. Aaron's heart pounded in his chest, but he did not run. He thought of his mother back on Earth, who had told him that courage was not about being unafraid but about standing firm even when fear wanted to crush you. The beast lunged and Aaron jumped aside, slashing with the knife. It cut through fur but barely wounded the creature. It turned again, faster this time. Aaron grabbed a long branch from the ground and held it like a spear. When the beast charged again, he thrust the branch into its mouth. The impact knocked him backward, but the beast howled in pain, blood dripping from its jaws. Aaron staggered to his feet and shouted, trying to draw it away from the girl. The creature struck him with its claw and pain shot through his shoulder, but he did not stop. He picked up a rock and threw it, hitting the beast in the eye. It roared again and stumbled. At that moment, the wounded girl crawled forward, her glowing hand reaching toward a broken shard of crystal nearby. She pressed it into the beast's side and a flash of light erupted, burning the creature from within. It collapsed to the ground and lay still. The forest went silent except for their breathing. Aaron fell beside her, his strength gone. She touched his arm gently, her expression soft, now filled with gratitude. She whispered something in her own tongue, and he felt the meaning in her voice even if he could not understand the words. When morning came, he helped her stand. Together they began to walk through the forest, hoping to find her people. She leaned on him for support, her eyes scanning the trees with very calm. Hours later they reached a ridge overlooking a village built from stone and glowing wood. The moment she saw it, she tried to call out, but her voice was weak. Still the guards below noticed them and ran forward. The villagers surrounded them with weapons raised. Aaron raised his hands again to show peace. The alien girl said something quickly, and the guards froze, then lowered their weapons. They carried her gently into the village, leaving him outside the gate. Aaron waited, not knowing what they would do. Then a tall figure stepped out from the largest hut. His skin was darker silver, his face marked with deep lines of age and authority. He was the chief of the Alani. His eye is fixed on the human boss standing among his guards. For a long moment he said nothing, only looked at the dead beast dragged behind them by the warriors. Then he spoke in a slow measured voice that even Aaron could partly understand. You fought this thing for her. Aaron nodded quietly. The chief walked closer, studying the marks of blood on Aaron's shirt and the broken knife still in his hand. Then he turned toward his people and said something in their language. A murmur ran through the crowd. Some nodded in approval, but others looked angry. Aaron could feel the tension rise. The chief finally turned back to him and said, You have entered our lands without right. You are not one of us. Yet you saved one of our own. The law says outsiders cannot stay. But the law also says a life that must be honored. He motioned for Aaron to follow. Inside the great hut, the wounded girl lay on a bed of woven roots. She looked stronger now, her eyes clear. When she saw Aaron, she smiled faintly. The chief looked between them and then spoke again. My daughter owes you her life. That is not a small thing. Tell me, human, why did you do it? Aaron hesitated. He looked at the girl, then back at the chief. Because she needed help, and because no one else was there. The chief stared at him for a long moment as if searching for some hidden meaning. Then he said, You fought a beast with nothing but a stone and your will. You could have run. Many of my warriors would have run. Perhaps your kind is not as weak as we believed. He ordered food to be brought. The villagers watched in silence as Aaron ate beside the chief's fire. The air inside the hut smelled of herbs and smoke. After the meal, the chief spoke again. Our world has been turned by beasts since the storms. They grow stronger each year. You killed one of the greatest of them. But such a thing does not happen by accident. Perhaps the stars sent you his. Aaron shook his head, saying he was just trying to survive like everyone else. The chief smiled slightly. Survival is the beginning of wisdom, but compassion is the mark of strength. You saved my daughter without hope of reward. For that I will give you something. He motioned to his daughter, who now sat up. She held out a small stone that glowed with faint blue light. This, said the chief, is a heart stone. It will keep you safe from the beasts. As long as you carry it, no wild thing will strike you first. Aaron took it with both hands, bowing slightly in thanks. The chief continued, But remember this, human. You have taken the life of one of our kind. The bond cannot be broken. Wherever you go, our spirits will remember. That night the village held a quiet gathering. The people brought food and sang songs around the fire. Aaron sat beside the girl, who told him her name was. She had learned a few human words while healing. She said softly that she had thought she would die in the forest until he appeared like a flame in the dark. He told her he was no flame, only a lost bow. She smiled and said, Sometimes being lost leads you where you are needed. The next morning the chief came to him again. You must decide, he said. Stay here among us or return to your people. The forest will not harm you now, but the path is long. Aaron looked around the villain at the faces that had once been full of suspicion, now softened with respect. He looked at who stood beside her father. Part of him wanted to stay, but he knew he had to find his crew if they were still alive. He thanked the chief for his kindness and said he would return one day. The chief placed a hand on his shoulder. Then go with our blessing. When the sky burns red at dawn, our hunters will guide you to the valley's edge. Before he left, give him a small bracelet made of woven vines and crystal. She told him it would help the heartstone stay strong. When he put it on, she touched his hand and whispered a word in her language that meant friend. Aaron walked through the forest, guided by the hunters, until he reached the ridge where the sky opened wide. He looked back one last time and saw the village shining faintly through the mist. The hunters bowed and turned away, leaving him alone once more. He started his journey through the wastelands, carrying the heartstone close to his chest. He could feel its warmth like a heartbeat against his skin. The beasts watched from the shadows but none dared to attack. Days turned into weeks. He finally reached the wreck of his ship and found that some of his team had survived. They stared at the glowing stone and the strange markings on his bracelet, but he only said that it was a gift from friends. When they asked about the scars on his shoulder, he smiled and said quietly that they were proof that kindness could sometimes win where weapons failed. Years later, when stories spread through the colonies about a valley where humans and Alani lived together in peace, some said it began with a boy who fought a beast with his bare hands. They said the chief of the Alani had sent his daughter to visit the stars in his honor, carrying a message of friendship. And though many did not believe such tales, Aaron knew the truth. Somewhere beyond the forest of blue trees, a people remembered the human who fought not for glory or power, but simply because a wounded girl needed saving. And every night when he held the heartstone and saw its soft glow, he could still hear the voice of the chief echoing in his mind, saying that compassion was the mark of true strength. It was a lesson that lived in him forever, and in the valley that grew from their courage, where beasts no longer roamed and peace was built from trust, stone by stone, heart by heart.